Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing So You've Been Eaten, a game designed by Scott Almes and put out by Ludicreations. And So You've Been Eaten is a game of, hear me out here, of being eaten. It's a 0 to 2 player game, and again, 0 player is accurate, but it's a game in which you are either a miner, a beast, or neither, or, well, you're not both, because you'll be playing with another player, but there is a miner and a beast, and the miner is descending into the literal belly of the beast in order to get back precious crystals for Corporation XYZ or whatever. And should you succeed on this mission, should you choose to accept it, then if you actually achieve and get those crystals, well, you'll be pulled back. The corporation will activate your incredibly expensive jetpack and retrieve you from the belly of the beast, as it were, and you have successfully won. Or alternatively, the beast has managed to fend off your attacks as you try to take, well, the crystals inside its stomach, and it slowly eats and dissolves you, dissolving its stomach acids into the lining of your flesh and skin. And this review got a whole lot darker than I intended rapidly. And when I say 0 to 2 players, what I mean by that is that it's literally 0 to 2 players. You can play this game as the beast versus the miner, which is one option. You can play it as a solo game of being the miner versus the beast, which is another option. And then you could play it as the solo beast versus the miner, or you could take both of those solo modes and pit them up against each other. That's really it. You can literally have a game in which you feel out the various ways you play, and you go through zero decision makings and zero degrees of any decision making whatsoever as you pit those two AI players against one another. And before you scoff at the idea of a game with 0 decisions, I mean, Candyland, War, who knows how many other games out there have 0 decisions, and yet they give you a procedural feel that is somehow called a game. Now, I'm not advocating you should play the 0 player mode. I think it would be great for kicks, but that is not why you should buy this game, in my opinion. But going through the game sequencing, there's going to be 2 different asymmetric sides in this game, playing it out differently. The miner is playing a game of rolling the dice and utilizing these actions, utilizing these numbers in order to activate different actions on their player board. There's going to be 6 different actions they can take. 3 of them are upgradable. And so, speaking of which, the first action is you can go ahead and use a die to upgrade one of your 3 primary actions, making it a little bit stronger. The second action is you can put a die into that top spot to rotate a die to any face. It's not the best utilization of your actions, but find yourself in a pinch and need a certain action, and it is the way to go. So now I go ahead and turn this to a 1, let's say, and I'll go ahead and put this over here where I can now upgrade or activate my upgraded actions. That's going to be what you're doing over here, utilizing those actions, and those actions are primarily going to come down to acquiring different cards in this lining of the beast's stomach, or to destroying different cards, which is going to be important as you try to get those crystals to where you need to be, because ultimately your goal as the miner is to get these different crystals, to get all 8 crystals from the game so you can retrieve and get, jetpacked out of the beast's stomach. Now, there is a game mechanism, before we go into how the beast plays, there is a game mechanism in which neither player fully achieves their goal. You get to the end of the stomach deck and you just have to go through some sort of scoring system of who did better along the way, since neither achieved absolute dominance. Now, speaking for myself in our plays, that's never happened. Every single game we've played has resulted in either the miner winning or the beast winning, and never really finding into that end game scoring system. Now, going from there to the beast is playing an entirely different game. Their goal is to slowly overwhelm and take out the miner. And they're going to do that in a few ways, but the primary way that they're going to do that is either to slowly advance their stomach acid attacks or whatnot to the 4th tier, because you get different attack types, and each attack damage is going to do damage to the miner, and the miner's immune system is going to fend off different types of diseases, but too much of a single disease and it will take it out. So if you specialize in doing one of the 4 types of damage, you will ultimately kill the miner, because at the end of every single turn, you're going to do damage to the miner equal to whichever stomach acid card is closest to the miner. So trying to stagger your turns, trying to arrange the cards in such a way that you can control which of the types of disease, whatever it is, that hit the miner at the right time, bacteria, which one of the bacteria hit the miner at the right time, that's going to be an important part of your decisions as the beast, because you can control whether the miner has 4 turns to achieve their goal, or up to 16 turns, although it's not really 16, it's probably like 12, 13, whatever it is. But there's a wide gap in how many turns the miner actually has, and it's up to you as the beast to control and give him or her as few turns as possible. The other way that you'll win as the Beast, past the scoring mechanism at the end of the game, is going to be developing your abilities, because you have different ability cards that throughout the course of the game, on your turn, you can utilize those abilities, which will give you both one-time use or scoring or ongoing abilities for the game. So what you can do is you can gather one of those cards, and there's a way you have to get them. There's a way you pay for the crystals, you have to have different cards in your hand, or different cards on the board that manage the balance of the game, and then there's a way these cards can be destroyed, and the reason that's important, these cards being destroyed, is because as you gather these cards, you will get abilities, but additionally, if you get 5 cards, the miner is going to lose. So the miner is playing a battle of starting off the game by trying to acquire as many crystals as they possibly can, as fast as they can. But as the game progresses, they find themselves trying to ensure that the Beast is not winning along the way, because the Beast may well win along the way if you are not too careful. And so they have to destroy the various abilities of the Beast. They have to ensure they are continuously gathering crystals, gathering tools that they can put on their sideboard in order to give them one-time use abilities from those cards. Taking out all the cards along the way, because taking out the cards is important. The more cards you take out, the quicker more new cards will enter the board. New cards that have those crystals you need, because it's an entire deck of stomach cards. There are 2 cards in this deck for each of the crystals. Each of the 8 crystals has 2 matching cards, which means should you miss out on 2 of those red crystal cards, you'll now have to just hope you survive until the end of the game and the scoring mechanism, because there's no way you can otherwise win. And that's the core way this game plays out. That's the core way So You've Been Eaten plays. Again, 2 characters. You have a miner who's trying to go through these lining cards, figure out what they need to do in order to get the crystals and survive the Beast's assault. And then you have the Beast, the creature, trying to slowly but surely take out the miner. There's a degree of taking out their upgrades, because while the miner is upgraded, they will be more powerful and do more things. And can you stop that? You'll be able to have more options at your disposal. One of the things I did not mention is this idea of predicting. Face down, you're going to put a card every single round. That's a bad one. That's going to be the Scar all revealed. Let's go over here. Let's pretend this one over here. We're going to put down a card secretly, which is predicting which of the stomach assets will hit the miner that turn. If you're right, well, you'll take out one of his upgrades, and that's a big part of the game. It might seem like a small decision, but playing little mind games with the miner of trying to figure out which one of the things they do is going to hurt them the most, that's important. This game is going to come down to the small decisions each side makes, the small little minutia of outthinking your opponent, or outplaying a card, or setting up a card row in a way that ultimately ends up hurting the other side. As far as what I like about this game, to begin with, I talked about it a little bit, but this game has a 0-player mode. Now, I'm not playing the 0-player mode. I have not played. I've played every single one of the modes of the game except for the 0-player mode. I've played a 2-player, I've played a 1-player miner, I've played a 1-player beast. I have not played it 0 versus 0 because I just didn't feel like that was an experience I needed to go through. But what I really appreciate is in this rulebook, in the So You've Been Eaten rulebook, they have a page devoted to the various solo modes, including a full page spread devoted towards playing it the AI versus the AI. They not only gave you the possibility of doing so, they devoted a full page spread to learning how to do that, so you can actually go ahead and play an AI versus an AI game, which I very much appreciate the attention, the thought process, the whimsicalness of designing a non-player game and putting the time and attention into putting it into your rulebook. Speaking of modes, the game does have, like I said, ignoring the 0-player mode for a second, the game does have 3 ways you can play. You can play it as a 2-player experience, you can play it as a 1-shot solo miner, you can play it as a 1-shot solo beast, which means there are effectively 3 different ways to play in this game that might resonate with you, and that's relevant because not all of these game modes did resonate with me. For myself, I found one particular mode to be my personal favorite, which we'll get to. But that means that this game has multiple ways it can appeal to you. Even though I'm not interested in some of the ways of playing this game, there is still a game mode for me in So You've Been Eaten. There are 3 different attempts or ways that this game may or may not work for you. The theme, art, and rulebook are all great, with minor nitpicks on the art which we'll get to, but overall, the theme is delightful. I mean, being eaten by a beast is something that I frequently think of or dream about, although usually it's not as entertaining as I do so. It's usually a little bit more horrific. I should probably see someone about that. But the theme, art, and everything else in this game is great. This is a prototype. Keep that in mind. This is worth mentioning. As always, this is a prototype. This game is currently on Kickstarter. I'll throw a link down below. But the game comes with both, well, I mean, even the prototype is deluxe as it is to a degree. But additionally, if you go to that Kickstarter page, there are going to be 2 different ways you can get this game. There's going to be a retail mode and a retail version of the game. I'm stuck on that mode word, as well as other deluxeified bits. So you can get various acrylic tiles for the crystals, these little acrylic pieces or whatnot. You can get upgraded wood tokens for the various bacteria, as well as upgraded acrylic tokens to replace those upgrade paths on your miner board. The game is going to come with different ways you can increase the experience, a little delightful miner for that solo mode. So there's going to be nice components, well, deluxeified, upgraded components in an already well-designed, well-graphically and thematically and visually whatever game. I like the fact that the Beast lets you upgrade their powers. If you've watched my reviews, you know that I love powers and abilities. I love the puzzles, and I love the powers and abilities. Those are the two things that resonate with me. And I think it's interesting because, to me, both of these creatures, both the size and the game, have a little bit of both, but in very different ways. The miner comes into powers and abilities in the sense of upgrading their core actions. Upgrading those actions is going to feel rewarding. It's going to be one of the first things you do, and it's going to give you that little bit of a competitive edge you need to ultimately outplay the Beast. At the same time, the Beast is giving you these upgrade cards that are going to give you the edge you need. So whether it's one-time use abilities, whether it's ongoing once-a-turn abilities, they're going to give you different ways you can adjust the experience, different ways you can mess with the miner to give you the edge you need against the miner. And similarly, the puzzle is going to play out differently. For the miner, it's going to be rolling those dice and going in there properly, rolling those dice, seeing the results that pop up, and using both the luck you received over here, as well as trying to figure out how to use that luck towards your advantage, figuring out how to allocate the dice in a way that is the most efficient. It may not be exactly what you want it to do, but if you can figure out the system, if you can figure out what's on the board, as well as which dice go where, as well as which abilities you've upgraded, as well as potentially cashing in on any tool cards you slowly gather throughout the game, then you will have options at your disposal. You will have things you can do that are, well, a puzzle. And similarly, the Beast is giving you that puzzle of looking at your hand of stomach cards and trying to figure out which ones to hold, which ones to play. You might want to hold on to some of those crystals because you want to hold back the miner from winning. Now, the game does come with a few mechanisms, both where the miner can utilize tools to gather crystals from your hand, but as well as the fact that getting your upgrade cards, the economy of that often relies on the crystals being on the board. So the game does specifically structure the balance around the fact that the Beast can hold on to crystal cards, but may not want to do so for too long. The miner is constantly on their toes with the dice they assign and staying alive long enough. And the Beast does have a little bit less decision space in terms of the way they can actually play out or predict their turn. But being able to play that prediction card, being able to try to guess what's going to happen and then try to structure the board, the cards they deal, all that around that, gives them a little bit of tweaking that they need, a little bit of mind games that they need to have some fun. As far as what I didn't like with the game, so I touched upon this briefly already, but the art, while I overall love the art, I did find that the appearance of the various symbols on the stomach lining cards, they blend in a little more than I would ideally like. You can see them, it's not the worst, but like you have things like a green on green bacteria with a little bit of a design around it. It blends in a little bit more, it goes a little bit more for the visual design over the functionality, at least when it comes to the art and the cards. That's going to be the only artistic, well actually I have one more artistic nitpick in terms of and again, prototype, worth mentioning, but somewhere on this board it shows, there we go, it's very, very hidden, there is a numbering sequence. My wife, when we were playing, mentioned, she's like, I just wish they had numbers on the board so I didn't have to constantly go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not a lot of counting, but just to be able to see exactly where the thing is, because you're frequently going to be utilizing those dice to target different things in the row. And so, as I was cleaning up the game the first time, I noticed that there were numbers on the board. They're just very, very faintly hidden in the background. Now, again, prototype on both these parts, so I have no idea what aspects of this will be changed at all. My biggest problem with the game, and this is going to go down to the player modes that I personally prefer myself, is going to be that for myself, I didn't appreciate the amount of agency that I personally felt the Beast had. Now, I say I personally felt because I've seen a bunch of reviews of this game from other content creators, and I know that I haven't seen this complaint from anyone else, so take it with a grain of salt. But for myself, I much preferred playing as the miner. While the miner to me, and again, this is something where I feel I have a difference of opinion than some others, but I felt that the miner had a harder time playing against the Beast. I felt that the Beast had more control, not control, but I felt the Beast had a stronger side. Not to a huge degree, but to a small preference that I felt the Beast was stronger. Now that doesn't bother me. I don't mind playing against someone who's a bit stronger. I just want to feel that I have more agency over my actions and the meaning behind those actions. And for myself, I preferred the way that the miner could allocate their dice and gather the tools and choose which actions they wanted to use and which numbers of which actions and how far down the road. I appreciated all of that a lot more than the fact that the Beast, I didn't appreciate the degree of agency I had as I played stomach cards down to the board. Because so much can change, so much can be destroyed that past the mental mind game of the card that you're predicting, I felt like most of the Beast's decisions were around which upgrades I chose. So there is agency, don't get me wrong. I just want more agency. I felt like that when comparing them to their AI modes, I felt that the Beast AI mode was pretty simple and a good match. versus the miner's AI mode, I felt that I preferred being the miner, if that makes sense. The solo game against the runner, one more thing, the solo game against the miner can be a bit tedious, going to the fact that the miner, when you flip that board over here, you're going to have different board sides for different, ways you play, and the solo game against the miner has you going through a procedural step-by-step action of assigning a die and running through a sequence. It's not going to be complicated for anyone who is used to solo games of any degree of depth, but it was a little bit more tedious than the kind of solo games I appreciate. I tend to enjoy solo games that don't have an autonomous player, so understand that I'm coming to the table with that resistance. I generally prefer solo games where I'm just doing the entire thing myself. Think Terraforming Mars or Sprawlopolis, where I'm just going through a sequence and doing my stuff and not worrying about any degree of autonomy. I generally do not like autonoma in games, and the miner here felt like an autonoma. It works well. It's just my own personal preference is doing my own thing and not playing against an autonoma. As far as I can see others not liking, the miner can feel like they're playing a harder game. I touched upon this already. That doesn't bother me at all. I don't mind fighting an uphill battle. I don't mind fighting a bit of a challenge, at least as long as I feel that I do have choice, control, or all of that in the game. And in this game, I very much do have choice and control, at least for the most part. So I don't mind playing against a side that feels harder, a side that feels more challenging, as long as I feel I have enough choice or control along the way. As far as my final thoughts on So You've Been Eaten, So You've Been Eaten is a game with 4 different modes of play. One is debatably a bit of a joke, although I am very fascinated, very curious as to how many people will actually play that solo versus solo mode. But for myself, my personal preferred way of playing this game is going to be the miner against the solo beast. That is the game that I enjoyed most. Playing it against 2-player head-to-head, I liked being the miner in a 2-player head-to-head game, but at least in our plays, both myself and my wife, we both preferred being the miner, and neither one of us wanted to be the beast, which means it's a game that we wouldn't end up playing the 2-player mode. And then playing the solo beast versus the miner, like I said already, I didn't like the beast's actions as much, as well as the fact that the miner feels a bit more like an autonoma, and so that wasn't a mode that I personally preferred, and my wife doesn't play solo games, so that's just myself and my own, what I'm playing. So for me, So You've Been Eaten is a game that I am primarily going to end up playing as a as a miner versus an AI beast is the way that I will be playing So You've Been Eaten. Overall, as far as rating, I rate this a 3 out of 5. It's a solid game, one that I have enough. I'm not like loving the full package of the beast situation, but I do appreciate the miner mode. My biggest question is going to be how this fares long term in terms of other solo games that are lighter accessible, like Sprawlopolis, like Under Falling Skies is going to be a very apt comparison with the way you roll dice and allocate them to different actions. And I do prefer Under Falling Skies, but this is a very, very different experience. So it is going to be in the 3 out of 5 category for me, one that's in my collection for now, but ultimately time will tell how it does in terms of whether I pull it off the shelf frequently again and again or not. I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you've enjoyed this review. I will include a link to the Kickstarter down below, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.